If workplace culture is your jam, you're in the right place. Check out this episode of Culture Secrets, the podcast dedicated to creating workplaces where both employees and the companies thrive. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Culture Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Chellie Phillips. And today, I just wanted to have a conversation about some things that were on my mind. It's going to be a little different. There's no guest. There's no interview. It's just me sharing a few thoughts that have been rolling around in my head this week. If you follow me on social media, you may have realized that recently I attended LitFest here in Noonan and had the opportunity to listen to a panel of journalists who have become authors. As someone who started my career in journalism before moving into communications, leadership, and culture work, I absolutely loved it. You know, there was something just so nostalgic about hearing them talk about chasing stories, meeting deadlines, interviewing sources, and trying to keep the facts right while the clock was ticking. It reminded me of why I fell in love with storytelling in the first place. Then a few days later, I started seeing headlines about turmoil inside one of the country's most recognizable television news organizations. Now, this episode isn't about that specific situation. I wasn't in the newsroom. I wasn't in the meetings. I don't know the people involved. And honestly, that's not what really interested me. What interested me was the public reaction to it. Almost immediately, people started debating trust. Who should be trusted? Who shouldn't? Can the media be trusted anymore? Can corporations be trusted? Can leaders be trusted? And it got me thinking about something much bigger than journalism. It got me thinking about trust itself. Because trust is something every leader, every organization, every business, every team is wrestling with right now. And I think we're living through a fundamental shift. For generations, trust was often inherited. People trusted institutions because they were institutions. People trusted leaders because they held certain leadership positions. They trusted the newspaper because, well, it was the newspaper. They trusted the evening news because it was evening news. I mean, I can remember so clearly watching Walter Cronkite back in the day, you know, like, because that's the way it was. This is the way it is. And you didn't even doubt anything. Like, there wasn't a question whether he was telling you the truth. Today, you know, not so much. I think people want proof. They want transparency. They want consistency. They want to see whether your actions really match your words. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something else. The tensions people are talking about today aren't actually new. I just think they're more visible. In fact, it made me think about one of the stories from my newspaper days that still makes me laugh now. I was a young journalist working at a weekly paper in the town that I lived in, and a new fast food restaurant was opening up. And I was assigned to cover that grand opening. So, like, doing what all good journalists wanted to do back then, I wanted to provide some context. So I interviewed a few of the existing restaurant owners in town and asked what they thought about the new competition. You know, to their credit, they were incredibly gracious. They welcomed the new business. They talked about how choices were good for consumers. They said they didn't expect it to hurt their business and believed it would be good for the community. So I included these comments in the article. Now, the editor approved it. The story ran. And then the phone rang. The new restaurant owner was furious. I mean, absolutely furious. Not because my story was inaccurate and not because the story was negative, but because other restaurants had been mentioned in the article. And before long, the publisher was upset and I got chewed out. And eventually I found myself apologizing to a restaurant owner over a story that had gone through the normal editorial process everybody had signed off on, you know, and looking back, it's actually kind of funny. In fact, more than 30 years later, I still refuse to eat at that restaurant chain. Now, that's probably a character flaw I need to work on. People who know me would probably agree, but here's the lesson that stuck with me. Not that anyone involved was necessarily a bad person, not that there was some grand conspiracy. The lesson was that organizations have always had competing interests. Journalists, editors, publishers, advertisers, business owners, community leaders, everyone views a situation through a different lens. Those tensions didn't suddenly appear this year. They've always existed. What changed is that today we get to watch them happen in real time. The curtains pulled back, so to speak. Social media gives us front row seats to conversations that once happened behind closed doors. Employees post online, internal emails get leaked, meetings become public, leadership decisions are debated instantly, yet the public can see more now than ever before. And that visibility, I think, has changed how trust is built. As someone now that spends a lot of her time helping organizations build culture, it's just fascinating to me because the same thing is happening inside companies. Employees don't automatically trust leaders because of a title. Customers don't automatically trust companies because they've been around for 50 years. People don't automatically trust organizations because they have a recognizable logo. Trust has become something that must be earned repeatedly. And honestly, I don't think that's entirely a bad thing. In my work, I often talk about the signals that we send. Every action sends a signal. Every decision sends a signal. Every response sends a signal. So when leaders communicate openly, they're sending a signal. But if they avoid difficult conversations, they're sending a signal too. When organizations own up to a mistake, that sends a signal. But when they try to hide mistakes, that sends an even bigger signal. So whether we realize it or not, people are constantly evaluating whether our actions align with our words. And that's how trust gets built or broken. Maybe that's why this topic has been on my mind so much lately. The journalist panel reminded me of where I started, and the recent headlines reminded me of how much the world has changed. But I don't know, what struck me the most is that the core issue hasn't really changed at all. So whether you're a journalist, a CEO, a supervisor, a small business owner, or the leader of a volunteer organization, the question is the same. Will people trust you? Not because of your title, not because of your history, not because of your reputation, but because of what they consistently experience from you. Perhaps that's the biggest shift of all. Trust is no longer granted because of who you are. It's proven through what you do over and over again. And maybe that's exactly how it should be. Because trust that's been earned through consistency is far stronger to me than trust that's been inherited through assumptions. So here's my question to you. What makes you trust a leader today? What makes you trust an organization? What signals tell you that someone is credible? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So thanks for spending a few minutes with me today. Until next time, I want you to remember that culture isn't built by accident. It's built by intention, and every signal you send matters. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, share it with friends, sign up and subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Culture Secrets. If today's conversation resonated with you, we'd love for you to share it with a colleague or friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. To learn more about building strong, people-first workplace cultures, visit ChelliePhillips.com, where you'll find resources, speaking information, and more insights from Chellie. You can also pick up a copy of Culture Secrets at your favorite online or in-person bookseller. Thanks again for listening. And remember, culture isn't something you talk about once. It's something you live every day.